The envelope was cream-colored, embossed with a cheap gold foil lining, and smelled faintly of cologne, his cologne. I knew what it was before I opened it. Mark had never been subtle. Inside was a single page, clean and cold, divorce papers. No note, no explanation. Just a legal declaration that 12 years of marriage could be reduced to a signature and a date. At the bottom, scrawled in his familiar handwriting, was a single line, "Let's not make this messy." I stood in the kitchen, the Seattle rain tapping against the window like a metronome counting down to rage. Max, our terrier, sat at my feet, unaware that everything was shifting. I stared at the paper, then at the wine glass still half full from last night. The same night he'd kissed me on the cheek and said he was staying late to finish drawings for a client. The same night he'd apparently decided to burn our life down. What Mark didn't know, what he never bothered to consider, was that I already knew. I'd known for weeks. Known about the missing money. Known about the dinners in Portland. Known about the bracelets and boutique hotel charges. I'd seen the messages. I'd seen her name, Vanessa, the junior architect who laughed too loudly at his jokes and wore perfume that lingered on his shirts. I'd seen the plans they were making. The new life they were dreaming up on my savings. What he also didn't know was that I had already acted. Quietly. Legally. Strategically. He thought he was blindsiding me. He had no idea the car was already off the cliff, and I was the one who cut the brakes. My name is Jennifer Wilson. I'm 38, a senior marketing executive at a healthcare firm in Seattle, and until recently, I believed in things like stability, loyalty, and mutual respect. I believed in the marriage I had spent 12 years nurturing, through late nights, layoffs, and family emergencies. I believed in Mark, my husband, the man who used to bring me tea when I worked late and rub my shoulders during budget season. I believed, until the evidence told me not to. We didn't have children. It wasn't by choice, we tried, for a long time, but when the tests and the doctors and the tears all led to nowhere, we shifted our energy into building a life, careers, a house in Green Lake, summer trips to the coast, joint accounts, a rescue dog. On paper, we were solid. Comfortable. Trusted. Mark was an architect, charming in that effortless, boyish way. People liked him. He made quick friends, told good stories, and could draw your dream kitchen on a napkin in 15 minutes flat. I handled the finances. Not because he couldn't, but because he didn't want to. He said numbers stressed him out. Said I had the brain for budgets, investments, planning. And I did. I tracked every deposit, every deduction. I knew the tax codes and the loopholes. I had a spreadsheet for everything. So when I noticed a small $327 withdrawal from our joint savings, flagged as a hotel in Portland, a city Mark hadn't mentioned in months, I didn't panic. I asked about it. He said it was a client visit, a last-minute overnight for a zoning pitch. I nodded. Believed him. Sort of. But then there was another charge. And another. Small at first, scattered. Restaurant names I didn't recognize. Car rentals. Then jewelry. A hotel in Napa. A wine tasting tour for two. The spreadsheet started to glow red. I didn't say a word. I simply watched. One Sunday afternoon, while Mark was in the shower, I opened his old iPad. It still auto-synced with his iMessages. He'd forgotten. Or maybe he never knew. My hands didn't shake. I scrolled and scrolled until I found her, Vanessa. Blonde. 28. She worked with him at the firm. I remembered her vaguely from the Christmas party. She'd worn a red dress and hugged him too long under the mistletoe. The messages were a script from a cheap affair novel. I can't wait until it's just us. She has no idea. I'm moving things around slowly. Once the savings are liquid, we're gone. My mouth went dry. Not from shock, because some part of me had known, but from the chill of confirmation. This wasn't a drunken mistake. It was a plan. A theft. A betrayal disguised as ambition. That night, I lay beside him in bed, listening to the rhythm of his breath, the same breath I used to find comfort in. I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to protect myself. Quietly. Precisely. Before he could steal anything more. The next morning, I woke up before him. I showered, dressed, and made my coffee like any other Monday. Mark was still asleep, sprawled across our king-sized bed as if he hadn't been plotting to replace me. He mumbled something as I closed the bedroom door behind me. I didn't answer. I had calls to make. By 8:30 a.m., I was sitting in the corner booth of a cafe near my office, laptop open, legal pad beside me. I called Ellen, an attorney I'd recommended to 3 different friends over the years during their divorces. She was discreet, sharp, and famously unflappable. When she answered, I didn't waste time. I need to talk. Not hypothetically. Prenup? She asked. No prenup. Washington State. Community property. There was a pause. Tell me everything. I did. The missing money. The affair. The messages. The timeline. Ellen didn't gasp or sigh, she just asked questions. By the end of the hour, she had a list of actions I needed to take and 3 words that stuck in my mind: start moving assets. The beauty of living in a community property state is that it cuts both ways. Mark may have had access to our joint accounts, but I had access to documentation, proof of financial infidelity. In Washington, that mattered. Courts took it seriously, especially when one spouse could show the other had used shared funds for extramarital purposes. I want to do this clean, I told her. No drama. Just protection. Ellen nodded through the phone. Then you're going to play the long game. Move quietly. Document everything. And when he serves you? You'll already be 10 steps ahead. And so I started. I opened a new savings account under my name only. I moved the remainder of my inheritance from my grandmother, $112,000, out of our brokerage and into a protected revocable trust. That money had always been mine legally, but I wasn't going to give Mark a chance to touch a dime of it. Next, I had our financial planner revise the title on our home, transferring my share into a legal entity under the trust. It was technical, complicated, and entirely within my rights, especially given the evidence Ellen was helping me collect. I left Mark's name on for now, but the groundwork was laid. I changed the password to every financial account I had. Froze my credit. Downloaded 6 months' worth of bank statements and highlighted every transaction related to Vanessa. Labeled each one with a date, a note, and a screenshot of the message that corresponded to it. He'd used our money to buy her plane tickets, jewelry, even a designer handbag she posted on Instagram with the caption "Earned it." No, sweetheart. You stole it. Mark didn't notice. Why would he? I still kissed his cheek before bed. Still made him coffee when I brewed mine. I even suggested we take a weekend getaway to Whidbey Island. He declined, citing deadlines. I smiled, said I understood. Every night, I sat on our couch with Max curled beside me and organized folders, digital and paper. I scanned receipts, timestamped emails, logged call records, and compiled every thread of betrayal into a meticulous, unshakable archive. I wasn't preparing for war. I was preparing for truth. And truth, when armed with precision, doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be undeniable. It happened 2 weeks later, on a Thursday morning, just after I'd returned from the gym. There was a manila envelope on the kitchen counter with my name on it. Inside, a stack of papers, our divorce filing. No conversation. No warning. Just a signature and a sticky note clipped to the top: "Let's keep this civil, okay?" As if civility was still part of the equation. Mark had finally made his move. He assumed I'd be blindsided. That I'd scramble. That I'd plead or panic or lash out. He had no idea that I'd already finished my preparations 2 weeks ago. I called Ellen. "It's here." Her voice didn't shift. "Good. Now we respond." The next day, we served our counter-disclosure and filed our documentation, the trust, the inheritance separation, the bank statements, the evidence of financial misconduct. Under Washington law, a spouse using joint marital funds to support an extramarital affair can be deemed to have breached fiduciary duty. Translation: Mark had voluntarily compromised his share of the community estate. We also requested an emergency motion to freeze remaining marital accounts and sought primary claim over the property, citing misuse of funds and documented deception. Everything we submitted was timestamped, notarized, and cross-referenced. Ellen made sure of that. She didn't play defense. She built fortresses. Mark didn't respond right away. He didn't even call. I think he assumed the legal process would be a formality. That we'd split everything down the middle, and he'd walk away with a tidy settlement and a new life with his mistress and the money he'd stolen. But then came the preliminary hearing. I arrived at the courthouse in a navy pantsuit and low heels, hair tied back, no jewelry except my wedding ring, still on, not a sentiment, but a symbolism. I sat beside Ellen at the polished oak table, while Mark walked in with a smirk and a lawyer who looked about 12. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The hearing began. The judge reviewed our filings. Mark's attorney opened with some bland statement about irreconcilable differences and equitable division. Then Ellen stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even glance at Mark. She simply presented our exhibits, page by page, detail by detail. Screenshots of his texts with Vanessa. Statements showing thousands withdrawn from our joint account and spent on her. Travel bookings. Jewelry invoices. Even Vanessa's own social media posts, timestamped to align with the charges. One photo of her wearing a bracelet he'd bought, with our shared Amex. The judge leaned back, eyebrows raised. Ellen continued, "Your Honor, my client is not seeking punitive damages. She is simply asking for what she is entitled to, and for protection of what was legally hers to begin with. These transfers were concealed, misrepresented, and used for purposes unrelated to the marriage. We contend this constitutes financial infidelity, and a violation of fiduciary duty." Mark shifted in his seat. The color started draining from his face. His lawyer stammered through a response, something about context and emotional distress, but the damage was done. The judge didn't rule that day, it was just a preliminary, but the tone had been set. Mark realized, maybe for the first time, that I hadn't been sitting in the dark all these months. I'd been documenting, strategizing, preparing. And now, he wasn't divorcing the wife who trusted him. He was divorcing the woman who outmaneuvered him. When the hearing adjourned, he tried to catch my arm in the hallway. "Jen, wait. Can we just talk?" I turned, looked him in the eye, and said quietly, "I already did all my talking. You just didn't know you were listening." Then I walked away. Not because I was angry. Because I was finished. Mark didn't call for a week after the hearing. I figured he was busy trying to calculate just how badly he'd misplayed his hand. He still thought of me as the accommodating wife, the woman who packed his lunch, supported his ambitions, let him handle the story while I held the structure. What he didn't understand was that I'd learned his language. I just chose not to speak it, until now. Vanessa, meanwhile, disappeared from the picture entirely. I noticed it first on Instagram. Her profile went private. Then it vanished altogether. Ellen's team had served a subpoena for Mark's spending history and unearthed a tidy paper trail, wire transfers to Vanessa, apartment deposits, luxury gifts, even cash withdrawn at odd hours. When his assets were frozen, so were hers. And whatever future he'd promised her, it evaporated the moment she realized the money wasn't his to give. She ghosted him. According to a private investigator Ellen hired, just to tie up loose ends, Vanessa resigned from Mark's firm 3 days after the hearing. No goodbye email. No forwarding address. Just gone. Mark tried to delay the next court date. His attorney requested time to reassess financial disclosures. The judge denied it. The evidence was too solid, too well documented. I continued to work during the day and refine my freedom at night. I sold off the Lexus Mark had leased under my name. Paid it in full and bought myself a gently used silver Volvo. Clean. Quiet. Uncomplicated. I enrolled in a 6-week French immersion class at a community center downtown. I'd always wanted to travel solo to Europe, but Mark had insisted we wait until the timing made sense. It made sense now. At the next settlement meeting, we offered terms that were fair, generous, even. Mark could keep what little remained in the account he'd siphoned into. He could take the furniture from the guest house, his vintage record collection, the canoe he never used. But the house? Mine. Protected by the trust. The joint investment account? Reallocated. The judge ruled that based on misuse, Jennifer retained full management rights over remaining holdings. The retirement accounts? Divided but adjusted in her favor due to documented financial misconduct. In the end, the only thing Mark walked away with was the exact amount he had stolen, just over $47,800. It was poetic, really. He thought he'd been funding his future with Vanessa. But that money was his share now. Nothing more, nothing less. When the final paperwork was signed, his lawyer avoided my gaze. Mark lingered behind, silent, a man watching the house of cards he built collapse, brick by brick, under the weight of his own ego. He finally called me 3 months later. I was at the airport, waiting to board my flight to Rome. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey, it's me," he said. His voice was soft, unfamiliar. "I've been thinking. A lot. And I don't know, maybe we should talk." I said nothing. "I messed up. I know that. But maybe we can. I don't know, rebuild?" I closed my eyes. Listened to the boarding announcement echo overhead. "Mark," I said, my tone even, "trust is like a mirror. You can glue the pieces back together, but no matter how carefully you do it, you'll always see the cracks." He didn't reply. So I hung up. And boarded my flight to a life that never needed his permission. Italy smelled like citrus and old stone. I arrived in Rome just as the sun was melting into the terracotta rooftops, casting the entire city in a golden hush. My suitcase bumped along the cobblestones as I made my way to the quiet apartment I'd rented near Trastevere. No resorts, no guided tours, just me, a notebook, and 6 weeks of stillness I hadn't realized I was starving for. The first few days felt strange. No emails from Mark. No dinners to plan. No pretending. I wandered through ruins, lingered in bookstores, ordered pasta without asking anyone else what they wanted. I drank wine at noon. I laughed with strangers. I ate gelato twice in one day because I could. Every evening, I sat by the window and wrote postcards, not to friends or family, but to myself. To the woman who stayed silent while being stolen from. To the woman who watched her marriage rot and didn't scream, but planned. To the woman who finally chose herself. "You are not the broken one," I wrote. "You are the one who walked away holding the pieces with both hands, and made something new." One afternoon in Florence, I found myself staring at Botticelli's Primavera in a sunlit gallery. The guide was murmuring something about rebirth and betrayal woven into myth, but I didn't need the explanation. I understood every shade in that painting. The moment where beauty is reclaimed from chaos. The calm after the upheaval. Meanwhile, back in Seattle, Ellen updated me via email. Mark had tried to contest the terms again. Failed. Vanessa had apparently taken a job in Chicago. The canoe was listed on Craigslist. Poetic. The house was legally and entirely mine now. The trust had held. The judge even commented on the elegance of the arrangement. Not revenge, Ellen had told me once, sipping espresso across from me at our last in-person meeting. You played the cleanest checkmate I've seen in 10 years. I didn't smile at the compliment. I just felt complete. After Florence, I took the train to the Amalfi Coast. I stayed in a quiet town where tourists thinned out and the air smelled like lemon and sea. There, I started sketching again. Not for anyone else, just rough outlines in a notebook I picked up at a street market. Ideas. Dreams. A home office remodel. A gallery wall. A new chapter. It was the first time in years I imagined a future that didn't have to be shared, approved, or explained. On the flight home, I ordered champagne and toasted quietly to myself. Not for escaping a marriage. Not even for winning in court. I toasted the version of me that never left, even when I stopped recognizing her. She was back now. And she wasn't going anywhere. 6 months later, I stood barefoot in the center of my newly renovated living room, sunlight spilling through the tall windows, touching the walls I'd painted a soft, warm cream. The hardwood floors gleamed. The air smelled faintly of eucalyptus and fresh linen. Max was curled up on the rug, snoring softly. The house was mine now, not just legally, but spiritually. Every corner felt like a declaration: you survived. You reclaimed. You rebuilt. There were no more shadows of him here. No more echoes of half-truths or the weight of unspoken resentments. Just me, a rescued piece, and the steady rhythm of a life I had reauthored with intention. I'd returned from Europe changed, not in some dramatic, Instagrammable way, but in subtler, deeper ways. I'd learned to enjoy my own company. To take up space. To want things just for myself without needing permission to claim them. I no longer made room for people who only wanted parts of me, or who smiled while stealing. Work had shifted, too. I left my corporate position and began consulting, selectively, on my terms. I only took clients I respected, only accepted projects that aligned with my values. No more late nights fixing someone else's mess while my own life unraveled. No more pretending balance was possible with someone cutting holes in the boat behind my back. And Mark? He called once more. I didn't answer. His voicemail was a mix of apology and nostalgia, wrapped in a tone that assumed access. I deleted it without listening to the end. Vanessa, I'd heard, had moved on. New city, new job. Maybe new target. That wasn't my story to care about anymore. Let them rewrite their lies with someone else. One morning, while organizing a storage box I hadn't touched since the divorce, I came across a photo of us, Mark and I, taken early in the marriage. We looked happy. And maybe we were. Or maybe we were just good at pretending. I studied it for a moment, then quietly slid it into the shredder. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. That chapter was over. I wasn't keeping mementos of a mask. In its place, I framed a photo from Florence, me, standing alone in front of a sun-drenched wall, head tilted back in a quiet laugh, hair wild from the breeze, joy unposed. I didn't recognize the woman at first when the photo was taken. But now, I saw her clearly. She was whole. And she was me. The best revenge isn't loud. It isn't cruel. It doesn't scorch the earth or beg for acknowledgement. The best revenge is peace. It's building a life so steady, so full, so beautifully untouchable, that the people who once tried to break you can't find the way back in, even if they beg at the door. And that's how I learned that trust, once broken, isn't something you repair for someone else's comfort. It's something you rebuild inside yourself, brick by brick, until the walls are strong enough to hold the life you deserve. And that's how I learned that the real power isn't in getting even, it's in getting free. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments. Tap like if you believe quiet revenge is the sharpest kind. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of karma and comeback.